All right, let's finish this bad boy up. We're finishing our lecture on survey items, talking about item formats. And those are basically just what they say, ways that you can structure or format your items. So some guidelines for writing items. You have a choice between open versus closed-ended items. They're really easy to remember because they just sound like they sound. Open-ended is you leave it for participants to fill in a response. Restricted or closed provide participants with response questions. So you tell, in closed-ended or restricted, you tell people what their answer choices are and they pick one. So open-ended is a fill in the blank. Restricted might be a question like, what is your highest level of education? High school, some college, or graduate school, so you have to pick one. Now, the problem with open-ended is that you can get all kinds of questions. So let's say that I ask people, what is your highest level of education? Well, some people are going to say high school. You might get one in a great while that says junior high. You could get beauty school. You could get veterinarian school, medical school, with CNA certified nursing assistant, all different kinds of things you can get. I have a certificate in life review. How would I classify that? So open-ended can be great if you want to know the range of answers that you can get from the real world, and it really helps you understand your participants. But it's terrible if you want to try to compare it with something else or compare education with other variables like depression because you really don't know. People can put anything there, and you might not be familiar with my certificate in life review. So you don't know if it was a postgraduate certificate or just a fun class I took. You don't know about it. So open-ended, its strength that it gives you a lot of information. Its difficulty, but its weakness is that it's really hard to code and analyze because sometimes you get all kinds of things that are just don't fit with your study question. So restricted can be better when you want to kind of, I don't want to say force, let's say encourage participants to into categories that make sense. And I think people would know. I mean, I would say that my life certificate is, you have to have your degree to get into the program. So I would say it's kind of like some graduate school. Oh, but some graduate school isn't in this question choice. So sometimes what researchers will do is they will put an other option. So if I wanted to get most of my participants in there answering a question, giving me usable data, I'm going to want to use a close-ended or restricted choice option. But often I would add, and you'll see, an other category. So that's for people who very strongly feel that their education doesn't fit in any of those categories. They can give you an other, which you can decide what you want to do with that data or not. So that's kind of a nice middle-of-the-road option because you don't get all of the variation that an open-ended question will give you unless it's central to your question, that variation. But with the restricted and an other, you get most of your people falling into categories that help you answer your question, but you also give them an opportunity to tell you something that might be important for you to know. So that's open-ended versus closed-ended items. Closed-ended is sometimes called restricted, and that's the main characteristic. And putting an other category is a sort of a nice middle of the road, but I'm going to talk mostly about closed-ended or restricted items because open-ended, you just put a line there. You let them answer, they decide. Now with the other item formats, you as the researcher decide on closed-ended items. So here is one example. It's of ethnicity, which ethnic group or groups listed below describe you the best. And this is for a local sample. It's got all different options. American, Indian or Alaskan Native. You know what, they don't. Oh, they do have Native Hawaiian. So appropriate for a local population, but might not be appropriate for other populations. I know I was just in Montana through a strange quirk of fate, and I was the only white person I saw in miles. However, some of those people who looked white might have classified themselves as Italian or Spanish. I don't know, but this would definitely not have been useful in that population. Way too many options. So you've got to consider, that's another example why you have to consider carefully what you put for your closed options. Another item format is a dichotomous, and just like it means di means two, gives you two choices. And that can be yes or no, true or false. I like to shop at large department stores. True or false? Well, that's great because you get my opinion on large department stores. But it doesn't really give you very much other information. Honestly, I only like to shop at large department stores when I have a lot of money. If I have money, it's really, really fun. If I don't, I'd rather go to a thrift shop or not shop at all because it just makes me sad because I don't have any money. So I would probably answer true to this question, but the person who wrote that question, they're not going to get my true feelings if they really care about my attitudes towards large department stores. So dichotomous format is nice, it's quick, it's easy to code, it's easy to answer, but it's not very nuanced. Another one is a polytomous format, and that's also known as a multiple choice. And that's where you give people a lot of questions. Which breakfast option do you prefer? Oatmeal, berries, and walnuts, spam and eggs, a bagel and cream cheese, or I do not eat breakfast. Okay, that's great if your participants actually eat those breakfasts. But, what happens if they don't? That's where I was going to tell you about the others. So if... for example, sometimes I'll go out and eat a banana parfait for Christmas, for breakfast. So where do I put that? That's when another question might come in useful. But polytomous is nice, also known as multiple choice. It gives people a structure to answer their questions, and it lets them answer questions in a way that you can use later on as meaningful data. Another, and this is a really famous one, I'm sure you'll recognize it, is a Likert scale. And on that one, you ask instead of a question, you propose a statement. And I'd say Arnold Schwarzenegger is doing a good job as the governor. And then I give people answer choices from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and they can choose. So that gives you a little more nuance than just a straight yes or no. In variable terms, if you assume that these are equal distance between these all, you can analyze this as continuous data, which is really, really helpful. But there is a debate within the questionnaire building community, whatever that is, whether you should put an odd number of choices or an even number of choices. And I want you to look at these two charts that I put here with answer choices and think about why we might want an odd number of choices, which is this top one right here, or an even number of choices, which is this bottom one here. You guys are so smart. You guessed the answer. The reason why we might want an odd number of choices is because that allows somebody to be totally neutral. They really don't care one way or the other, and sometimes that is useful. Now, if we have an even number of choices, people have to go to either the disagree or agree side. They have to answer one or the other of these, disagree and agree. And if you want to, I don't want to say force, but if you want to set things up so that your participants do choose a side, then you want an even number of choices. So that's a Likert scale, very, very common. There's also a category format, and that's on a scale of 1 to 5. Please rate how blah, blah, blah. And these are really, really nice. In fact, if you use Qualtrics, you guys might have heard of Qualtrics. It's the latest and greatest online survey building questionnaire. They actually have questions that you can make sliders. So people can slide from one end to the other and pick where they want to be, which is fun from a test-taking perspective. If you're a weird test taker, you think that's fun. Anyway, a category format is just asking people to rate on a scale. Now, the important thing to know about category formats is, first, they're very, very useful. They definitely give you continuous data. And they allow people to, again, have neutral, or neutral is with odd numbers, and having people take a side is with even numbers. But it's very, very important that you put direction in your scale, in your answer choices. Sometimes you'll see questionnaires where people will rate, with 5 being very happy, or they'll write with 5 being very happy and 1 being very unhappy in the question. But that's not a good idea to do that. I mean, it's to do that without putting those weights on the questions, those labels or anchors that say very happy, very unhappy, or very happy. And if it's a very long survey, or you're asking people to rate a lot of things, their opinion or memory of a lot of things, it's very important to put those weights in there often. So you don't want them to answer more than 10 or 15 questions without a reminder of what those weights are. Because if they're like most of us, you're like, wait, which one's happy, which one's unhappy? And you might get confused in the middle, and then the researcher can't use your data because you got confused, which is very normal when you're answering a lot of questions. So as the researcher, you want to really help your participants not get confused by putting directional anchors on at the ends of that format. Other formats, one that I used in a survey, which didn't work out as well as I thought it would, is we gave people little pictures of the human body, and we said, please mark the areas where you feel pain. But some people just kind of circled their whole body, and we couldn't figure it out. Excuse me. Another thing that's, depending on your audience, can be really useful with children or easily bored older adults. You can ask them to circle the face that best describes their feelings. Or this is also good for people whose English is not a first language, to find pictures to describe, as long as the pictures are good and recognizable. And cover the bases. I don't see angry here, but it helps a little bit. It's from sad to happy. These can be really, really useful. And then, of course, as the researcher, what you would do behind the scenes is you would assign a number to each of these categories to help you analyze it. So these, just consider other item formats. They can be fun for the participant and make your job a little easier. So those were just some formats to make your write your questions. I recommend, and I think most experts recommend, that you should vary your formats a little bit in a test, not too many. You don't want to do it just to do it, but it helps kind of wake participants up in the middle of formats and lets them be more attentive to your questionnaire. So putting it all together. So you want to make sure that with all the other questions that you put that relate to your constructs of interest, you want to also get some demographics. And these can also help you, if you have good demographic questions, can sometimes be variables in and of themselves, but you definitely want to get enough demographics, as we talked before, so that the reader knows about your sample. If the reader's going to want to know what the age of the people you studied, ask them. The race, ask that on the questionnaire. Their income, if it's pertinent, might be pertinent to a study about shopping, might not be pertinent to a personality test. Income probably shouldn't be related to personality. Marital status, again, if it's relevant, ask it. And questions about these can be at the beginning or the end of your questionnaire. And there's two different schools of thought on it. I'm fairly educated. My family is, and I've pretty much grown up taking tests or surveys my whole life. I guess it doesn't even matter. Yeah, I guess it does matter being educated because you just have more experience in school or educational settings. So I'm perfectly fine with the demographics at the head of the study. However, there are some reasons why people might not be comfortable with demographics at the sample, particularly populations that have not had very good experience with tests or surveys or authority knowing too much about them. Some people really hate answering demographics. When I first got here, I did a study of grandparents raising grandchildren with, 5 or 6 tutus from the windward side. And oh my gosh, they completely hated me starting out with asking their age and their race. What do you want to know that for? Why does anybody care how old I am? Yeah. So I found out very quickly that's not a good question to lead with. It really, really did not help them. Where if you put them at the end, you've kind of warmed people up a little bit. You don't get them riled up. You don't get them mad at you at the beginning of the survey. And often they'll feel more comfortable. They feel almost as they get to know you or trust the survey or at least get some experience through the survey. And if there aren't any red flags at the beginning, they're a lot happier answering demographic questions at the end. So that's your choice as the researcher, wherever you want to put them. Some people feel like they're a warm-up for the content-related questions. Some people feel like they're a cool-down. Either way, up to you, but you do want to think about it. The other thing that you would want to do is group related questions together. So if you're asking people about their health, ask all those questions together. Don't ask a health question, then a memory question, then a personality question. That gets them all confused. Don't get going back and forth. Ask people related questions together. So for example, a few years ago, I did a study for middle school students on Molokai. And we wanted to know about their self-esteem and their attitudes towards the future, or how optimistic they were about the future. So we grouped those questions together. So you can see here's the self-esteem, which is age appropriate. I like the way I look. I'm fun to be around. Those kinds of things. We're measuring how they feel about themselves. And then the last one is attitudes towards future. All those are grouped together just to get them in the mindset and make it easier to answer. So I try to stay focused on the future. I care about how you do in school. I try hard to learn and study, etc., etc. So they can get into the mindset, answer one set of questions, and then there's a clear switch between those topic areas, which helps them answer them accurately. Another related suggestion is to put general questions before specific questions. And you've probably seen questionnaires like this. It's practically standard to put in general, how is your health? Poor, fair, good, excellent. So now this question signals you're talking about health. Then we're going to ask you some specifics in the last 30 days about how many days did you feel really sick? Did you wake up tired? Etc. So we've got the general health question before the specific questions, kind of to prime people. Once your survey is complete, but before you give it to your audience, you will want to pilot test it. And by pilot testing, I mean that you test your questions on a group of people that are like your sample, that are like your population of interest. So, for example, on that study for middle schoolers, I asked a couple of friends, kids who were the same age as the students I would be sampling. I asked them to complete the survey. And they told me I said some things that sounded stupid. And if there a way for me to fix it, I did, because I valued those kids' opinion. I wanted to make sure that my sample understood the survey and answered it in a way that was meaningful to me. Meaningful in education level and experience and background. So that's really important. The other thing that's useful with pilot testing is you can also get an idea of how long the survey is going to take. So, as an example, I just did a survey yesterday. It was for an online health company. And I was really mad because of course, they had an informed consent document before the survey. And they said, can we have a little bit of your time? This survey will take 10 to 15 minutes. And so I thought, well, I'm a really fast reader and I take surveys quickly, so I'm going to take it. It took like 20 minutes. I was so mad. I like the last of the questions, I'm just like, whatever, I hate you, answering the questions because, I don't know, I was snacking. I had a little bit of break. I'd take their survey, but I certainly did not want to spend 20 stupid minutes on their survey. So it's a nice help if you tell your participants it's a brief survey. Make sure it's a brief survey. Test it on people like them, because by the time you've written your survey, you have no idea how long it takes. You have spent so long thinking about these questions and wording about these questions and making sure that all of your questions are reliable and valid. You don't know what's you can't tell at that point how long it's going to take. So it's very important to pilot test and have a group of people similar to your sample take it, so you can, 1, eliminate bad questions, and 2, give them an accurate assessment of the time that it will take for them to finish it. Here's an example of, this is so embarrassing. When I first started researching, this was a question that I put on a study for younger kids. And it says, our junior high kids, it says, here's a list of clubs, organizations, and teams found at many schools. Please indicate whether you are already participating in them, plan to participate, would like to participate, are not, but they are not offered at your school, or if you're not interested. Phew, poor kids. I mean, I say that now, and I just get hives. It's such an ugly question. But so I pilot tested this question because, keep in mind, I had spent a whole month developing the survey and making sure everything was correct. And then I get this questionnaire and people are like, oh my gosh, no way. My pilot testers told me, though, that question's horrible. You have to fix it. So what I came up with, it's still not beautiful, but it helped: sports with a coach, martial arts, cultural activities, theater and the arts, multimedia, academic. So that really helped a lot. It's still a difficult question because I think I was trying to get at a construct that's hard to get at with a questionnaire. But I think that this sure looks better. Pilot testing sure helped me improve it, because people told me the truth when they took my survey, is that it was ugly. So there you have it. You have what's important. You have how to write good questions, why anonymity and confidentiality are important. You have some item formats to choose from, the strengths and weaknesses of each one. And so just for fun, I've posted a practice survey in this week's modules. So it contains a terribly written survey that you can read to spot mistakes and explanations for why the questions are bad. It's optional, but I encourage you to go through it because it'll help you with your projects. And you can do it together or with friends. I hope that you had fun with the Reese's Pieces last week. And so I think it's kind of fun to spot the bad questions. Oh, I should have said you can do it alone or with friends. Do it however you want. It's just practice. It's optional, but I hope it helps you. So have a great week, and I hope you're learning lots, and I will talk to you soon.